as he is monitoring the conversation. This is this week's installment of Ask a Treasury Recruiter. So Scotty and I will be taking your your questions around your job search, interviewing, resumes, anything like that. We have a topic in mind today. It's specifically LinkedIn profiles, and that is the result of a poll that Scotty had put on his profile. I know that we're speaking live on his profile right now. So if you have anything, please chime in. We're here for you. This is the time that we give each week to answer your questions about your job search and everything that goes along with it. As I mentioned, we do have the topic of LinkedIn profiles that we're going to be discussing today, but please jump in with anything. This is your time. We are simply here to answer questions. So along with that, Scotty's back. Scotty, how you doing?
Not too bad, Joe. Thanks for asking. How about yourself?
No complaints, no complaints. It's a Monday and we're off and running. So with that, I guess, Scotty, do we have any right off the bat, any questions from the community, anything like that yet?
No questions yet. Just hi from Colorado. Lisa, hi back from both Utah and Michigan.
All right, perfect. Hi, Lisa. And so, Scotty, I guess, talk to me a little bit about your experience as a recruiter using LinkedIn and how you use LinkedIn basically today and as a recruiter.
Sure. Yeah. So like we were talking about offline here, Joe, I think, LinkedIn probably didn't intend to be a platform for recruiters, but recruiters, I think, were the early adopters, and we were the ones who drove this platform forward. If I had to guess, I mean, I've been using this platform since 2010. The way I use it, to answer your question directly, is it's a cross-reference for me with someone's resume. So, I think pretty much there's not a recruiter that I know that doesn't use LinkedIn daily to at least cross-reference what somebody has on their resume with what they might have on their profile, but also just try and glean a little bit more about somebody based on, the content that they produce. If they produce content, the comments that they make, their interests, anything outside. It's just another data point, right? Outside of the resume. And, so I think at minimum, you should have a profile. And we're going to talk through kind of what that profile maybe should look like today and how best to use LinkedIn. But yeah, that's how I've used it as a recruiter. You've been recruiting a little longer than I have. How about you?
Yeah, very similar. It's funny because LinkedIn essentially made the cold call a warm call for exactly the points that you had listed, right? If someone has a built-out LinkedIn profile, you can see where they went to school, you can see where they've been, you can see how they interact with their community and exactly how big their community is. So those are some indications that you get right off the bat before you're even reaching out and connecting with that person. It takes away all of the internet research for the most part that's needed. In some cases, depending on how far profiles are built out, it may require some additional research, but really, it's been an instrumental tool throughout the course of my career. I've been using it a little bit longer than you have. I think probably since 07, 08, right around there. And I've seen it evolve, and it continues to evolve. It seems like it's going more from a networking platform to more of a learning and education platform. So it's really fascinating to see just the new features that they have allowed since the time, the newsfeed didn't really exist when this first came around. It was just a whole bunch of people connecting, but now it's, you can get your thoughts out there, you can show your expertise, you can interact with your community. It's really cool to see how it has evolved, and it's been that much more useful as a recruiting professional.
Indeed. Yeah, I think, to your point, from when it started until now, obviously tons of different iterations, and they are going a little bit more toward the learning and development, I guess track, if you will, but it is still absolutely instrumental. And I think one thing I'll say is, as recruiters, or I should say just for me personally, sometimes we take for granted like everybody will be on this platform, and not everyone is. But again, obviously we're speaking on it today. It's probably going to be lost on those who aren't participating. That we highly recommend, if you especially are, really for anybody, because anyone who's ever going to want to find another job, and that's everyone, right? could benefit from having a LinkedIn profile. So we do come across those that don't, but definitely feel like it is an absolute must in the 21st century in terms of job seeking.
Absolutely. And to that point, I know a lot of people look at it as kind of another social media platform that they need to manage, and that can be time consuming, especially if you don't understand it. And a lot of people make the mistake really of only, much like networking, only using it when they need to find a job, or that's the only time that they're active. When, as a matter of fact, like the amount of information that's exchanged or that you can uncover and research just on your own using that platform, whether you're looking for a job or not, that's the best time. Like that's the easiest way to network time and time again. It takes away the cold call, quote unquote, aspect from it, makes it a warm call. So you have points of contact, or I should say speaking points, when you are going to reach out to someone. There should be something to talk about no matter who you're speaking with or who you're reaching out to.
Agreed. Well, should we get into the meat of it? We still don't have any questions. I guess it's a good opportunity to remind those of you who are on live. Please let us know what questions you have. Again, this is an Ask Me Anything format. So, happy to address questions outside of the topic. But the topic today, of course, is LinkedIn, how to use it. And we're going to kind of go into starting at a relatively high level and then drilling down into some stuff that hopefully you guys haven't heard of already. So any specific places you want to start, Joe? I know we have a lot to talk about here.
Yeah, let's start right with the profile. I mean, let's just tackle it right from the top. With number one, if you mentioned, make sure that you have an account, make sure that you have a profile. Keeping it up to date is important, and we'll walk through what that looks like. But let's start with the profile picture. Number one, there are plenty of studies out there, if you do a little research, that having a profile picture is you get more engagement, or people just get a feel for who you are more so, and they're more likely to accept connections, interact with you if you have a profile picture rather than not. Scotty, what you have any best practices just on what a profile picture should look like or how it should be used?
Yeah. And again, this might be kind of rehashing what people already have heard on this platform or other platforms, frankly. But just in case, I'll just speak to some best practices. Number one, you want the profile. This may feel needless to say to me, but you want the profile to clearly be of you. So ideal profile picture is going to be. It doesn't have to be a professional headshot, but it should be a picture of your face. One where you can clearly see what you look like, no sunglasses, no family photos. I mean, to be fair, people can take as many risks as they want to with certain things. And so I guess this would just be like the safe way to go about it. But at the end of the day, just a picture that's clearly of your face is kind of, the best practice.
Yeah, it just kind of goes hand in hand with making sure that there's a name with a face, that you're identifiable. This helps for if you're going to interview, just, meetings, anything like that, anything that you can do to really just make sure that it's presentable, who you are, make sure it's up to date so that people aren't surprised if they do wind up meeting you face to face. I've met so many people off of LinkedIn who maybe have outdated pictures or anything like that. But this is your common point of reference. It's the foundation of the relationship. So you want to make sure that you're being represented appropriately.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, those pictures that are 20 plus years old, probably want to avoid at this point in time. A picture of what you look like today is kind of the goal. So I don't know if there's not any, necessary recommendations around this, but I would think every couple of years you probably want to take a look at your picture and potentially upload a more recent one.
Absolutely. Right off of there, location is extremely important. I've seen and I've heard different recommendations where, hey, say you live in Michigan and you're looking to move to Utah, that you should move your profile over to Utah or anything like that. What are your thoughts around location?
Yeah, so I would, on that particular question, I think that I think it's tough, right? I don't necessarily, and maybe this is a point of disagreement between the two of us, I don't know, but I don't necessarily recommend moving your location to a place you want to be if that's not where you are, because I think that's going to, create some expectation misalignment with recruiters when you're interviewing and or hiring managers when you're interviewing for a job, where they find out, oh, you're actually not where your LinkedIn profile says you are. So, I would argue you want your location to be where you are. And that's the exact reason. The other thing that's important about it is, again, once in terms of searching on LinkedIn and how us as recruiters use it, and we'll peel the curtain back on that a little bit today. It's super important, right? We have an opportunity in a certain geographic location. Generally, we're going to filter for that location. So, I'm curious to your thoughts on if you want to relocate to a place, whether or not to proactively update your location to that place. But I would argue best practice is you want it to reflect where you are today.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you. I believe that you should have it accurate and updated. If there's anything that needs to be explained in terms of relocation or anything like that, put it in your headline, put it in your summary, put it somewhere on your profile, because recruiters should be reading that. To your point, just from a search basis, people will or recruiters will search geographic specific, because it's relocation, especially this day and age, is a little bit tougher. So you're always going to look for local talent first, and then you'll reach out to the extended network after that. But there are workarounds around it, like I've just mentioned. But make sure that the geographic location is accurate based on where you're at in the world today. It's an important call out, because if you do relocate and you're going to a different market, I've spoken with people in the past who still have it in their old market. So then if they're reached out, or if I reach out to them about an opportunity in the old market, they're like, hey, I've relocated. I don't know why you're contacting me about this. It's happened, and then it's just a real quick, oh, sorry, it's says you live in Salt Lake City, not in Detroit. So my apologies. It's just something to make it a little bit easier. And I think, what we see is the end result. Granted, don't get me wrong, recruiters are really bad with mass communication, a lot of different ways. I know you and I, that's probably a conversation for a different day, but it's, if you want targeted communication based on what you're looking for and where you're at, then the more, I guess, context clues, or the more clues that you can include on your LinkedIn profile, that's only going to help people at the end of the day with making sure that they're approaching you about the right opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, we've got a question from the community, actually a couple of questions in one comment. So Adnan, thank you for the comment and your questions. Joe, I'm going to pitch these over to you. I'll start with number one on the list here. Yep. There's two of them. First question, how would a usual exchange/introduction be like for Treasury professionals? So I think the gist of the question is, when doing outreach to other Treasury professionals, what should that sound like?
Well, it's there are a number of ways that you can go about this, right? You can have the canned. Well, here's the thing with LinkedIn is, when you go to send an invite, first and foremost is finding the people, and that goes into being strategic, like we've talked about before, making your target list of companies, identifying people that you want to connect with in those organizations. But the common mistake that I see with people is you don't personalize the invite. And if you're doing it over the phone, there's an extra step on their app, basically, where you have to click on more and then add a personal note or whatever to a connection request. But if you're doing it via computer, when you go to hit the connect button, you can add a personalized message. You get a lot of traction there. And that's where it's, hey, Scotty, I see that you're a practitioner over at Scotiabank. I'm also a practitioner and I'm interested in getting into Scotiabank. If you don't mind, I'd like to join your network. The whole idea is you want to focus, you're asking someone, so you want to join your network, or you want to join their network, and position it messaging that way, opposed to having them making it all about you. I think that's where we see a lot of people go wrong, is you got to, in order to entice people, you have to do the with them, the what's in it for me, and put yourself in their shoes, opposed to making, well, hey, you can help me, so I'd like you to join my network. That's where I see people go wrong with this all the time.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only thing I would add to that, I think I agree with everything you said. And in terms of what's in it for them, right? What's in it for the other person? The exercise that I think always makes sense is just reading the message you've just written and thinking about it in terms of, okay, if I just got this invitation request from someone I don't know, how would it read to me, right? So like you say, Joe, personalize it, find something the two of you have in common, and then, it's okay just to ask for help. Like, we're going to talk a little bit about the strategy here in a few minutes, but at the end of the day, you do have an interest in the company they work for. By virtue of that, you would like to you would be very happy if they would accept your invitation to be part of their network. So I don't think we need to overthink it beyond that. Question number two.
Just a real quick note on that. That's where, like, sticking to your second degree connections and really building your network. That way you have some sort of commonality. Like, when I'm reaching out to people, it's usually because we have a group in common. We have other practitioners in common, anything like that, so that you're a little bit more of a known commodity or known resource, or there's some point of familiarity there. As where third, you get your third degree connections, and it's kind of a crapshoot. You never know, unless there's something that they really can identify within that 250, 300 characters of that invite that you can add. You're kind of playing with fire a little bit there. So that's why it's important to continue to build your network constantly so that you have more second degree connections and more familiarity with the people that you're reaching out to.
All right. So now we're going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but you brought up a point that's important for two reasons. Well, it's important for a number of reasons, but it brings to mind 2 points. The first one is, sometimes I hear from people who say, I only connect with people on LinkedIn if I know them already. And I just, I would make a strong argument today that the purpose of this platform is to get to know other people. Otherwise, it's like, why map the existing, physical network you already have digitally? Well, what's the purpose of it? You don't really need a LinkedIn profile at all if you're only going to accept connections from people you already know. Again, the point of it is that you want to have, you want to expand your network. You want to grow your network. Second of all, to your point, and this is something that probably a lot of people don't recognize, we know because we spend so much time and we've learned these lessons the hard way. But if you send too many invitations to connect with people that are not second degree, and frankly, even your second degree connections, the point is, if you send too many unwanted connections, LinkedIn will actually, penalize you for that. And you can get to a point where they'll say, hey, you need to stop, because the people you're sending invitations to connect are not accepting them and are saying, hey, I don't like this invitation. So that's the purpose behind some of the, kind of best practices we're talking about in terms of how to do outreach. And again, Adnan, thank you so much for the question. It's a great one. Anything else you want to add on that, Joe, before we move on to Adnan's second question?
No, I think we've covered the basics. I mean, it's we can always dive deeper into it, or, even if we run out of time today, if anyone else has questions out there, you and I know enough about this to be dangerous, where we're happy to lend any kind of advice or information that we know.
Indeed. Okay. So Adnan's second question here: is it okay to put up degrees that are or that is a degree that is due in 3 to 6 months period? So in other words, I think what it's saying is an anticipated degree, an anticipated certification. So what do you think, Joe?
I would probably stay away from it, unless I don't know enough about LinkedIn to see if you can do an anticipated completed date or anything like that. But if you haven't achieved it, who knows what happens between now and those 3 to 6 months. So if people are reaching out to you assuming that you have that degree or that certification, and it turns out that you don't, it turns out to be misleading. You're damaging your credibility right off the bat. So I would probably stay away from it until it's completed.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that's exactly it. The one caveat there is, if you have an opportunity to say anticipated, but to Joe's point, there's a bit of risk, right? If for whatever reason it doesn't happen this semester or whatever else. And I would argue, like, there's not really a ton of upside to may as well just wait, right? And then add it once you have it. So.
Yeah, you and I can claim to be NASA astronauts in training expected next spring, but the reality of that happening probably isn't going to This is gonna be
I think anybody who knows us, Joe, knows that that would be a stretch.
Scientist. I am not a rocket scientist.
That's awesome. All right. That great questions. We don't have any more that I'm seeing. It's a good opportunity though, just to say any additional questions, whether they're regarding the LinkedIn profile and best practices on how to use LinkedIn as a treasury professional or otherwise, please pop them into the comments and we'll answer them as we go. But getting back to our topic at hand, Joe, we're still, I think, on profiles, and I think maybe we can move relatively quickly through the rest of the profile, right? You have a summary, and then you kind of have work experience sections, and then there's a number of other things as well. What best practices or recommendations do you have around those?
So first and foremost, make sure it's built out similar to your resume. It doesn't have to be an exact replica or anything like that. But the whole idea with this, just as your resume is, you want people to be able to find you, number one. And that's also having a built out resume with the key terms where you have, how do I put this? If you're properly exemplifying your experience and you have those terms, you want to keep these terms fairly general if you have experience with them. So if it's cash management, it should be cash management. Operations, that's what's showing up again and again throughout your profile, because when recruiters or whomever else go to recruit and go to run searches through LinkedIn, your profile, part of where it shows up in search results is also based on how often those keywords that are searched for are showing up in that profile. So number one, just make sure it's built out. Make sure it's worthwhile. Don't just go put cash manager like all over your summary or anything like that. Like, be smart about it. It's still a representation of you. The whole idea is that you want to put the experience out there. You want to highlight your accomplishments. You want to highlight, you want to make it all about your accomplishments, very similar to resumes, because this is your LinkedIn profile is what's doing the marketing work for you while you're sleeping or while you're not on LinkedIn. It's another way for people to find you. And the whole idea is it's essentially your window dressing. It's to get people to want to learn more, want to reach out to you, want to connect with you. So the summary or the about section, I think, is underutilized. I think it's you have basically I forgot how many characters it is, but you have this gigantic space to just talk about what you've accomplished throughout the course of your career and what you're looking to do next, and even how to reach out to you. You know, it's I have my email address and I think my cell phone number in mind. So it's just be as open as you want with it, but make sure it's completed, because that's the way people are going to find you.
Absolutely. I would echo all those points. Couple of, my opinion, right? Only there are people that may disagree with this, and I'd be interested to hear their arguments. But I would say that, to your point, it really is. It's like a digital resume. This is a platform for essentially a little bit more dynamic resume. So with that in mind, I don't care if you're Sir Richard Branson or Gary Vaynerchuk or Bridget Hyacinth. And I hope none of these people have actually done it this way. But I think having a summary written in the third person just doesn't make a ton of sense. Even for those quote influencers, right? To my mind, you would never write a resume in the third person. It's essentially what a LinkedIn profile is. From anecdotally speaking, myself and many of the recruiters I speak with, it's a big turnoff. So I'd say stay away from that. I'd also say it is about your accomplishments, but making sure that you're speaking in terms like you would on a resume about, the teamwork that you've been a part of. I think you can err a little too far on the side of I. So that'd be the other thing. And the last thing that you didn't mention, Joe, and I'm sure we've thought about these things before, is the headline's another piece of real estate that's underutilized.
Yep.
So, there's nothing wrong with having a headline that's essentially your current job title. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But there's also something to be said for kind of what is it that you do? What value do you create for the organization that you work for? And thinking about that, you only have a limited character count for headlines. But if you can think about that and fit it in a way that makes sense, I would argue that that's an underutilized aspect of the LinkedIn profile.
Yeah. And I guess along those lines, couple of admin things that we've forgotten too is make sure that the email address that you use for LinkedIn is accurate, because LinkedIn's going to send you notifications if you get communication or outreach or anything like that. Or depending on your comfort level, once someone's connected to you, they can actually see your email address and reach out to you directly that way or over LinkedIn Messenger. The whole thing is, if you have an unmonitored email address that you use for that, you're not going to receive that communication, which can be critical if you're looking for a job right now. And if it's going to like an old work email where you're no longer there and it's an inactive email, you would never know. So that's one thing, as you were talking, that I thought about and I forgot to mention earlier, but that's important. And then, yeah, the headline is extremely important too, just because it's, when you think of search results, how they show up on the other side, it's just the person's name and write what they are, your headlines right under there. That's even before you click on a profile or before anything else. So it's an easy way to get some attention. I know it's not really specific in Treasury because you only have so many titles out there, but there's a difference between internal titles and external titles. So what you're thinking is, yeah, it doesn't matter how long you've spent, could be X amount of years at company XYZ. If you're called an analyst there, but it was really a manager, it's like, that's where you got to kind of figure that out. It gets into a little bit of a dicey scenario there. But the whole thing is keep it generalized. Like if you're a sourcing ninja, quote unquote, no one's going to search for sourcing ninja. So don't call yourself a sourcing ninja. You're a sourcer, or if you're an analyst, you're not a super special treasury guru or anything like that. No one's going to find you that way, right? You're a treasury analyst. That's what you've done. That's what you're looking to do. If a quick call out, going back to the headline piece, is if you're looking to make that jump into your next role, put in there that what type of opportunity you're looking for. So, hey, if I'm an analyst right now who's open to manager opportunities, that's my headline: Treasury analyst looking to make the jump into Treasury Manager. Because what you're going to do is you're going to catch two different types of search criteria there, where people are going to figure out what you're up to and what you're looking to do very quickly. It's kind of those warm reminders or those opening emails without having to do a whole lot of research, but it'll catch people's eyes.
Indeed. And just to stick with the headline theme, we have another question from Lisa. Lisa, thanks for the question. She asked, should you put numbers or special characters in your headline?
There are many schools of thought on this. I tend to stay away from it just a little bit because I don't know. It's still a professional platform for me at the end of the day. Yeah, you can be yourself. Yeah, you can like you and I joke around and comment on each other's statuses and that type of stuff. But I'd probably stay away from emojis and special characters and that type of stuff, just because it's wasted real estate. It doesn't really communicate about you. I can't really think of a scenario, and correct me if you feel differently, but I can't think of a different scenario where that would add value or benefit or give someone what they need.
Yeah, and then again, I think that's the same. Just Lisa, from a recruiter standpoint, both Joe and I think many of the recruiters that are part of our networks would make the case that there's not really. I don't know any reason why you would put numbers or special characters in your headline. There's not really a benefit. Like Joe was saying, the benefit of the headline is the searchability. And so thinking about, the things that a recruiter might be searching for on the other end, I've never once searched numbers or characters, special characters, ever. So I would echo that point as well.
And just a quick caveat there, I guess, is that it's your profile at the end of the day, so do what you want. This is just me and Scotty, kind of our thoughts and opinions around this. So if you want to express yourself in the headline that way, by all means, go for it. But it's not if I'm looking at a profile, it's not gonna make a difference to me.
Yeah, likewise, I think that's a good point, just to say that this is an Ask a Treasury Recruiter. So of course you're getting our opinions is all you're going to get. Okay, so with regard to, now we've got high level of building out a profile. Perhaps we spend just a few minutes, because we're getting close to a half hour on live here, but maybe just a few minutes about the strategies of what are you doing on LinkedIn, how best to utilize your profile, and also, maybe some tips around searching.
Yeah, so for me, it's always actually look at the person's profile and read through the person's profile before you're going to interact with them. And once you're connected with them, you do have the ability to reach out directly and to do all of that. As it kind of goes hand in hand when you think of the evolution between just the initial research and the initial outreach to how you interact after you're connected are two completely different things. But again, you can get a feel for what that person's posted, if they've posted, who they're connected to. Like there are just so many different ways that you can go with that, and so many instant kind of connections there that you can follow up, and that's where you focus on building that relationship before it asks. But just being able to see what they share, how they interact, and that's all right on the profile. I mean, you go down to the dashboard and you can see what they've done and their activity. So it'll show you, and if you click on see all, like you can see what they've posted, what they've commented on, and what they've shared. So that's pretty much, that'll give you a pretty good indication of who that person is and what they're looking to do or how they typically use this platform.
Absolutely. Yeah. So a few things I would say, and maybe this, I don't know if this is the experience that many treasury practitioners get, but I would imagine it is a lot of, there's more and more LinkedIn selling going on, right? So you're probably, as a treasury practitioner, you're probably getting invitations to connect from people who in their invitation have like a sales pitch. Yep. Or they'll ask to connect and then immediately follow up their connection once you've accepted with a sales pitch. And generally, I think most of us kind of think that's, that's not an experience we typically enjoy. So I think that's important when you're curating the people that are coming through to you. We talked about it earlier, being an open networker. But that doesn't mean you need to accept every single invitation that you get, because what you may end up with is an inbox filled with, kind of spammy stuff. Yep. So that's one strategy I think that's important. And then again, it's just, you flip that around to when you're doing outreach. We've already talked about this as well, but what's in it for the person on the other side? You don't want to come across as that way either. Yep. I can tell you for a recruiter, that getting an invitation to connect and then the very next message is, hey, here's my resume. Let me know if you have jobs that I'd be a fit for. We just don't have the bandwidth. We don't have the time. Yep. Because guys, we get hundreds of those emails, and so I don't think send a resume like in a message unless you're invited to do so. So given those kind of, high level tips, what should the strategy be, Joe?
Well, I think there's a strategy between the initial outreach and then there's a strategy after once you're connected. Once you're connected, make some sort of remark. Hey, thanks for accepting. It's nice to be a part of your network. Here's typically what I'm able to offer. Here's what I see coming out of you. And again, stay away from the ask right off the bat. Focus on building the relationship first. The ask comes later. So maybe if you found an article insightful that person shared, or if you found if it's maybe you have coworkers in common, hey, where did you work with so-and-so? Or just something like that to generate the conversation so people start to put their defenses down. Because to your point earlier, nobody wants to be sold right off the first message, because it's just like, I think you and I do this enough where you can kind of see it coming from a mile away, where you accept an invite and then all of a sudden within an hour it's, hey, well, what can you do for me? It's just, it turns you off. I mean, you can't be transactional is what it comes down to. You have to focus on the strategic and building the relationship, I guess, is what I would leave this with.
Yeah, 100%. So we've talked about this before, but just really quickly, I'll kind of run through. If you are an active job seeker, this would probably be the best strategy for you. If you're a passive job seeker, the best thing to do is be active, remain open to connecting with people and interacting with others' content. There's plenty of, again, quote, thought leaders on LinkedIn who say, you've got to create content. You've got to create content. I would argue that, yeah, sure. Creating content is going to be it could be part of a strategy, but way more impactful for most people is going to be to engage with others' content. So if you're a job seeker, identify the top 10 to 15 companies or more, right, that you're interested in. Don't focus on ones that are hiring today only. Focus on those that you're interested in.
Yeah.
Do a little research, confirm your interest. And then from there, LinkedIn's your best friend, because you can now create lists of people that work at that organization, and anywhere from 10 to potentially 50 people that work at that organization. Really what matters is people that are going to be in the space you're occupying, so Treasury, but also the stakeholders, right? Folks in accounting, in finance, and then importantly, don't forget the HR people, right? The corporate recruiters, the head of people, et cetera. Send invitations to those people. Like Joe said, it's pretty straightforward. I'm interested in your company. And then from there, I would say the next thing to do is try to meaningfully engage with those people on their content. So when they put out a post and you have something of value to add it in the content, in the comments. Nothing wrong with saying, hey, that's a great post, but it doesn't necessarily add value. So if you can add value in the comments, they will notice. Joe and I both can tell you from personal experience, unless you are a Sir Richard Branson or a Bridget Hyacinth, most of us notice the comments we're getting. And that'll be impactful. You will remain top of mind for those people that you've connected with, and they'll see that you're bringing value into the content that they put out there.
Yeah, and that kind of solves for your own content creation problem, right? Because if you're dropping insightful feedback onto someone else's stuff, or if you're sharing something with your own thoughts, that takes all the thought out of, hey, how do I be original? How do I come up with something? It's more of you're able to show your expertise and show that you know what you're talking about. You're still going to show up in other people's news feeds. And the whole idea is just you want to build your credibility. You want to build those relationships, because Treasury, we talk about it all the time, right? We don't control when these opportunities come up. We can only be there when the opportunity does come up. And that applies to us. It applies to job seekers. I mean, it's the more you show up and the more people get to know you and get comfortable with you, I think you'll find that it opens more doors for you.
100%. Yeah. And that would be kind of the last thing. I think we're probably getting close to needing to wrap up today, but we say this a ton and we'll continue to say it because it's super important. Don't wait until you need a job to try and start doing this stuff. This is not just useful for finding a job. There's so many reasons why building your network and maintaining your network is important in life. It don't have to do with finding a job, but what we find time and again is people say, "Ooh, I've been pretty bad at this and now I need it." And so being proactive and trying to, spend, an hour or two per week, just jumping in your LinkedIn and doing some sort of engagement and or outreach, even if you don't think you need it, it's going to pay dividends in the long run.
It will. And then I guess along those same lines, take what you're learning. If you're on the market right now, take what you're learning and don't forget it once you have a job, because we run into that. Just to really drive home the statement that you had alluded to earlier, is it takes a while to build and cultivate these networks, but it does take an effort to maintain them too. And your network can go dead on you very quickly if you don't take that time and dedicate that time to maintain your network. So hopefully you guys found that helpful. With that, I think we're going to wrap up unless we have any other questions from the community.
Nope, no other questions at this point, but just want to thank everybody who stuck with us for the last 40 minutes for being here.
Perfect. Well, with that, join us again next week. And if you need anything in the meantime, Scotty and I are always available to you. We'll talk to you then.